So here we are in the heat of the playoffs for you NBA fans. I just checked it out. I don't know. Is your team still in, Arnie, for the NBA?
My team is playing at 7:30 my time, and we need to beat those East Coast Nets. So go Bucks! Fear the deer tonight. Fear the deer tonight.
I don't know. You think there's any chance? I don't know what happened to the Bucks. They were like shoo-ins, and now it's like we don't know if they can win.
Well, it would help if Harden decides not to play tonight. So we'll have to see in a half hour what happens there.
Oh, I just saw a headline that that Steve was going to talk about Harden about tonight, but I don't know. Anyway. Oh, that's really funny. I finally got the first question finally. I always give Arnie the first question because Arnie's that great first. He's that kind of guy, right? All right, in the NHL, I have to say the Islanders against Tampa Bay, two great teams, Canadians and the Silver Knights. Any preferences there? I don't know. Cody, you can weigh in on this too because
Golden Knights. Absolutely. Go Golden
why?
Knights.
Why?
Why not? Newer team, expansion, captured the hearts and minds of the United States a couple of years ago by going all the way to the finals, a team that was picked to actually finish dead last in all of the NHL. How do you not love a team in Vegas?
I don't know, but what about the Islanders, who are not a very new team, who have been living in obscurity, who are moving to a new arena for the first time next year? Imagine that. And I grew up with them, so therefore I am biased.
I think you're going to see an Islanders.
I mean, Gary Bettman's like one of our biggest fans here. So like, hello.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a Vegas Islander final. I think that's going to be a heck of a Stanley Cup championship. But if you've watched any of the home games in Vegas, first of all, that building is full, and it is a crazy crowd. And I think Vegas has got to go into it as the front runner and the potential champion here. But it'll be good. It's nice to have hockey back and see fans it's nice to see fans everywhere. The baseball stadiums are opening up for the most part, and NBA arenas and NHL. So it's just great to see people out and cheering.
Without doubt. And I think since I saw you, since I saw you last, I did talk about I was at the PGA Championship, and it was so great to be outdoors with people there. I also like that they limited the amount of people. Selfishly, it's actually a nicer experience with less people. Obviously, not the best economic one for our team owners or whoever's in charge. Anyway, let me introduce, if I could, Cody Decker. That's okay, Arnie, and everybody else. All right, here he is. Let's see. He is a UCLA Bruin. Led the Pac-10 in home runs, 21 his senior year. We can talk about whether the ball in that time in collegiate baseball, whether the ball was in any way hot, right? I'm sure it wasn't.
Major League Baseball has nothing to do with the NCAA ball, so no, they were not hot. Only league that changes.
I love it.
The only league that changes the balls is MLB.
Now this is how come we know you're old, Cody, because you're a two-time All Pac-10 selection. My son graduated from the Pac-12. That's why I'm just teasing you. Drafted by the Padres in 2009. Minor league stints in California League, Texas League, Arizona League, Pacific Coast League, and as Arnie said, the only league that Arnie actually led, which was the Southern League.
One day in the Jackson Generals. One day, won a ring.
There you go. Major League debut with the Padres in 15. And you had stints with Royals, Rockies, Red Sox, Brewers, Mets, Diamondback organization. And here's another one. And it's really interesting. Cody, we haven't really met before, but after this, we'll be best friends, I'm sure. But when Team Israel, when they started to put together baseball in Israel, I was invited to be on the founding board of baseball in Israel. And stupidly, I said no. I was busy and I said no. I never say no to anything. And now I do regret it. But you played for the Israeli national team in the early rounds of the 2013 World Baseball Classic. You played for the team during the 2017 World Baseball Classic. And now we know, right? Israel they made the Olympics, didn't they?
They did, but understand there is a difference between the Israel national team and the World Baseball Classic team. The World Baseball Classic is a tournament put on together by Major League Baseball. They wanted to create their version of the World Cup. So you have a lot of major league players, a lot of minor league players, some college kids mixed in there as well. The rule of that tournament is the same rule as the Olympics. You just have to be able to get citizenship to that country. So if you have grandparents that are born in Italy, you could play for the Italy team. Same way as I got to play for Israel. I'm an American Jew from Los Angeles, California, specifically Santa Monica. If you are in Santa Monica and you look like me, you're most likely Jewish. It's just I grew up in a large Jewish community, and honestly, it never was weird to me. It was just normal life growing up in Santa Monica that everybody was Jewish. And it wasn't until I left Santa Monica that I started to really see, oh, you guys did not grow up the way I grew up. You guys think I'm strange. That's odd. It's an interesting experience, the Jewish experience through athletics, especially when you've had I wouldn't say a sheltered life, but definitely a skewed vision of what the real world was like when it came to Jews in sports.
By the way, I think that's a great point. I'm just going to leave it by telling everybody that you had a cameo in NBC's espionage thriller State of Affairs, which is really alludes to your engagement, involvement in the entertainment industry. And you'll tell us more about that as well. Hey, Arnie?
Yeah, well,
even though I asked the first question about Stiesel, you get to ask the real first question.
No, you did a great job asking that first question. That's a great show, by the way. We've watched the entire episodes of it, so it's terrific.
I don't want to take all the credit, but my one scene really pulled the whole show together.
Did it? Okay. What, Cody, Southern California kid, go to UCLA, drafted by a California major league team. It's got to be a dream. You're staying in your home state and, going to school in Westwood, just down the street from where you grew up. And was it a difficult choice selecting UCLA? Who else were you looking at?
I was looking at mostly at the time Pac-10 schools. I was talking with ASU, Arizona, a couple teams in the WCC, for instance, Pepperdine and LMU were very heavily involved. But the school I wanted to go to as a kid was UCLA, but my whole family's a USC Trojan family, so that did not go over very well with my grandparents. So I kind of reverted my sights to looking at USC, and I got a scholarship offer to go play at USC. I was all set to go, and then all of a sudden they called me and started changing the offer and changing the parameters of the offer. And I don't know if you know this about college baseball, but there's only 11.7 scholarships per team. 11.7 scholarships divvied out to about 45 players. About 5 to 10 of those players are red-shirted players. So you have about 40 players that you got to divvy out. Only a fourth of the players can get scholarships. So you really have to choose where you spend your money very, very well in college baseball. So once they started taking away some of my money, USC at the time was about $45,000 a year. UCLA found out that they were changing the parameters of my deal. They came right in and just said, hey, listen, we can't really offer you what they're offering right now, but we can offer you 1 quarter and a year. And then after your first year, we'll take care of all your schooling. And I looked at how much UCLA cost in state in California. At the time, it was only $7,000 a year, where USC, $45,000 a year. This was a no-brainer. It was the best place I could go to, closest to home. It's UCLA. They're the first team that got to 100 championships in sports. When it comes to the Mount Rushmore of college sports, UCLA is right at the very, very top of it. I was really, really proud to be a Bruin for those 4 years. And quite frankly, it was really, really fun to beat the living hell out of USC for 4 years. It was easy. They were terrible. I just loved destroying that school.
That's great. I just have to ask before Donna jumps in, in baseball, I think a lot of the people on the Zoom may know, a lot of players come out after high school and go straight to professional into the minor leagues. Did you ever consider that, or was college always the first option?
I tell this to any kid: if you have an offer to go play professionally out of high school or a chance to go to a 4-year university, especially a D1 university, you go to the university, plain and simple. If you think that you're going to make it to the big leagues out of high school, you are just flat out delusional. In the history of Major League Baseball, there have been just over 20,000 players that have spent 1 inning in Major League Baseball. That is, in 150 years, that is not even 1/3 of filling up Dodger Stadium. So the odds of making it to the big leagues are staggeringly low. So if you're planning on betting on yourself out of high school as an 18-year-old kid who really doesn't know what kind of ball player he is yet, and quite frankly has not faced the talent that you're going to be thrown into, it's very much the mentality of, you've been a big fish in a small pond. You were a high school baseball player. You're going to play against grown men who are professionals, who have more experience than you will ever imagine, that know more than you'll ever imagine. Quite frankly, I learned more in college than I could have ever imagined that I would have learned, not just about me about baseball, but me as a player, and more importantly, me as a person. Leaving at 22 to go play professional baseball rather than me at 18 playing professional baseball, we're two very different people. And I strongly suggest, unless a team is giving you, unless you're a first rounder and you're being offered life-changing money, and that would be 1.5 to 2 million or higher, you do not sign. You do not sign. You go to a university and you get your education. Baseball ends for everybody. I played for 11 years. Not a lot of guys play for 11 years. Guys are out of baseball within 1 to 2 years, always. They never even make it to AA. Every level you go, things get filtered out more and more and more. And with Major League Baseball contracting the minor leagues, 50 teams, the odds of getting an actual minor league job right now, those jobs are at an absolute premium. So get your education.
That's really interesting, especially at a time, if we look, we'll switch over to the NBA if we could for a second, Cody, there is now a privately owned professional high school league, right? The G League has expanded beyond. The idea of one and done might be you don't have to go to college at all, right? And you make a great point. I mean, how many of those jobs are really available? And yet, if you're in that track, the temptation is to give up that educational opportunity and see if you can make it.
Yeah, it's just not a good idea. If you're in Vegas and you're playing the odds are staggeringly against you. Baseball ends. That diploma never ends. So you need to get your diploma because your career is really going to start after you're done playing. Not only that, think about those 20,000 players that have played in Major League Baseball. Those guys did not make life-changing money. You hear the stories about the guys signing $100 million deals and $300 million deals. That's a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. The odds of you even getting a chance to breach arbitration to ever even see that type of money, when I say that, a 7-figure deal, those guys are a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. So you're wasting your time if you think you're going to go straight into professional baseball and just climb your way up. It's not how it works. It's not even remotely how it works. In fact, it's a very ugly business. It doesn't matter even how well you play. If you play really well, it does not mean you're going to move up the rankings. It means you've kept your job. That's about it. To actually move your way up, you have to have about 19 people in the front office that are very much behind you.
That's true. I mean, it is true. I wonder what Ari thinks about it being a really ugly business, Ari. Right? I don't know if you want all those young kids. That said, did you like grow up, thinking like, hey, I'm going to be a professional baseball player?
Yes.
Is that what your thought process was?
Yeah. I was. I trained with Reggie Smith my entire life. I was playing with the Japanese national team when I was 12. There was never a doubt I was going to be a pro baseball player, but I had other interests. I went to UCLA specifically. I wanted to go to film school. I was at UCLA. I had a lot of films that I made in high school. I was part of the Santa Monica Civic Light Opera. I starred in plays and musicals. I starred in The Music Man and Noises Off and a bunch of other plays. It was just, I liked doing things that made me a little more well-rounded. And it definitely made things a little more interesting when it came to baseball because I loved doing interviews. I loved going out and talking to crowds. I loved doing radio. I mean, when I was in high school, I worked on at KLOS all the time for Mark and Brian. And then even into my professional career, I was working on 100.3 The Sound for a show called Mark in the Morning, just in the off seasons, just because I loved doing radio.
Yeah, we can't tell that you like talking to us, really. I mean, Arnie, can you tell that Cody likes talking?
No, Cody is one of the more introverted guests that we've had on the show, so we'll have to pull it out of him tonight, Donna. It would be my concern.
All right, I'm going to leave the heavy lifting to you, Arnie.
All right. Hey, Cody, I have to tell you, one of the things I love about your background is, you are one of those guys that persevered. Drafted in, 2009, made your debut in 2015 with the Padres, and then still played another 4 or 5 years with different organizations in the minors. Talk a little bit about the minor league experience. I saw it firsthand because I was involved in the industry, and I know our friend David Perlman, he lives it all the time. But talk a little bit about what it was like. Did you get frustrated at all? Did you ever think you were going to just, give it up and before 2015? And then you got to talk about your signing bonus. I thought that was great. We aren't talking about 6 and 7 figures here for that first signing bonus.
No, my signing bonus was $638.43 after taxes. I'll never forget it. Zach Nelson, who's our head clubhouse manager in Peoria, Arizona. I just got signed. It was his first year as the head clubby for all the minor leagues. It was my first year in professional baseball. I remember he comes over to me on the training table, hands me an envelope that was a check, and he's like, "Hey, Cody, It's your signing bonus. Don't spend it all in one place. And I remember I opened it up and I took the check out, and the guy that was working on my knee, just kind of getting me ready for the game, he looks over and peeks at it and just goes like, it's going to be kind of hard for you though, huh? That sucks. I'm like, yeah, it does. And then I went for the next like 4 or 5 years, never seeing a comma in a paycheck. It's very frustrating to be a professional baseball player, especially one that's has to be labeled as a grinder. Did I think about quitting? Probably every single moment that I was awake, just only when I was awake. When I was asleep, I bet my dreams were lovely. It was a very challenging career to have. You don't make any money. Your travel is absolutely brutal. The meals you're getting, if you can call them meals, are very tricky. You're playing with negative numbers in your full bank account, and that's just the way it is. And you don't really, it doesn't matter how well you play. So much so that I own every single San Diego Padres minor league record, and they never called me up. So it's just one of those, they didn't call me up until the very end. And when I remember when they did call me up, they didn't even play me. So it's just one of those things. You got to be somebody's guy. And I had a lot of turnover when I was with the San Diego Padres. I had 5 different general managers, 3 different owners. So it just every single time a new front office would come in, I would kind of get bumped back down the list a little bit, no matter how close I was to the big league. So it's part of the business. I mean, I remember sleeping in my car my first year playing in AAA because I couldn't afford to live anywhere, because I remember I was playing in San Antonio, Texas in AA in the Texas League. I got called up to AAA, which was Tucson. They wouldn't let me drive my car, so I had to ship it out of my own dime. Unfortunately, shipping that car cost me more than my entire paycheck, and it took weeks to get to me. By the time it got to me, my bank account was completely dry, and I had to sleep in my car at Keno Stadium in the parking lot. That is just kind of part of the grind of being a professional baseball player. It is not as glitzy and glamorous. After the games, you're lucky if you guys got enough food to feed the entire team. It's just, that's the grind of being a professional baseball player. The rewards are staggering. The highs are through the roof high, but the lows are as low as it gets.
So what made you hang in?
I was really good at it, and it was fun. And I enjoyed playing baseball. The one thing I miss about playing, I don't miss playing per se. What I actually really miss is the clubhouse. I miss being around the guys. I miss affecting a baseball game, not necessarily on the field. I miss affecting a baseball game, going over scouting reports, going over numbers, going over how we're going to attack a player when I was catching, or going over that scouting report with a pitcher, or breaking down scouting reports of a pitcher that's going to be facing us today, or me preparing that I know I'm not starting today. I'm pinch hitting, and I was a power hitter. And my job was to basically, if I was not going to be starting that day, I had to be ready to basically come in and hit a home run in the 9th. I had to have full scouting reports of everybody, know everything that I could possibly see, and then throw it all out and go out there and compete. It's something that just does to your adrenaline. And plus, when you hit a home run and you hear the crowd roaring, man, there's no better feeling than that.
Really? But you had Jewish parents. So at some point, weren't they like, Cody, get a real job?
No, my parents are the very non-stereotypical Jewish parents. My parents are follow your dreams until it kills you, which it practically did.
It sounds like it almost did.
Yeah, many times. So yeah, that was my parents' kind of thought process. I got very lucky. I had parents that supported me all throughout my career, throughout my entire life playing baseball. Baseball is not a cheap sport to play. It's in a very expensive sport growing up, especially if you get in that club ball route, which, by the way, that club ball route is just the biggest racket in America running right now. There's nothing focused on developmental. It's just about basically running teams out there into tournaments. And it's a money pit, unfortunately. And there were times where me and my family fell into that same idea. Well, he's got to get out there and have scouts see him. That's not even how recruiting's even done. So it's just, there's so much misinformation on what you actually need to do to get to the next level.
Hey, Cody, talk a little bit about the minor league dugout. I mean, one of the things that's great about baseball is, especially minor league, is you have this hodgepodge of different folks that are on a team. You've got people that are coming from Central America, from other parts of the world. You have players that came up in a more affluent background, players that came up inner cities. I mean, talk about what you saw in your minor league experience relative to just the gumbo of all of the players, and how did you all get along?
We got along really good. My job was basically to take care of clubhouses. My job was to keep guys together, keep things loose, and have as much fun as possible. In fact, at the end of my career, my last 2 years with the Diamondbacks, they even said, we need you to go there and beat Crash Davis. There's really nothing you can do to get called up. We just need you to take care of our guys. I said, all right, I'm better than your guys, right? And they said, we know. It just doesn't matter. I said, cool. Love that. That's why the Diamondbacks only have 20 wins this year. But it just, it was just the role I was in. And you see the guys, you mentioned hodgepodge of players. That doesn't really even stop to the big league level. I mean, the only time you don't see it is in the college level. You have a lot of guys that are recruited together and very similar backgrounds. But you mentioned it. Professional baseball, you have players from Central America. You might have players that are from Venezuela. The Dominican obviously is a massive thing. Not as many Mexican players in the United States, but there is actual legality reasons to that. It's actually very expensive to hire Mexican players to play in the United States rather than Dominican players are extremely affordable. And a lot of teams have facilities in the Dominican Republic. So they're training them at a very high level, very young. So it is a big hodgepodge, but it also, you get to see a lot more of that, how international baseball really is when you get into some other play. Like if you play in Japan or Korea, or if you play in Venezuela or Mexico, which I did many, many times, you get to see different aspects of the game and how it's played. And when it's in the States, there's a certain way it's played, but seeing how all these other people from different communities are affecting the game right now and changing the game into something more exciting and more fun. I think the direction baseball is actually going on, as far as on-field play, is going in the correct direction. Less stuffy, more curtain pulled back, way more fun, more exciting. It's just the other things that people don't want to let go of, the old ways, which I'll never understand for the rest of my life.
So listen, we have a bunch of questions. I see Ruben, is it Ruben Gassi? And Joy, and there's something about belly dancing from David. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, Cody?
I have done belly dancing, if that's the question. It's in a documentary.
The question is, are you going to belly dance for us tonight? That's the question.
Probably not. My hips are a little out of whack right now, and I don't really have that skirt dress where it makes the noise. You can't do it without that skirt dress.
He was willing to go with you tonight, but that's okay.
I mean, it's not that hard. It's just like a hip thrust. I mean, I can kind of do it right now, but you don't hear it, and it doesn't do the same effect. Although, if you do check out the documentary Heading Home, The Tale of Team Israel, about our 2017 run, there is a wonderful scene where you could see that my hips truly do not lie.
Here's what I'm interested in, and I'm hoping on behalf of all of us here. You had the chance to get a glimpse of 7 different, if my numbers are right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 different major league organizations.
8, actually.
Okay.
You probably don't have the Brewers on there.
I do. Royals, Rockies, Red Sox, Brewers, Mets, Diamondbacks, and Padres.
Royals, Rockies, Padres, Diamondbacks, Royals. I'm sure it's 7 or 8, whatever it is.
Whatever. Okay. Anyway, so you got a lot. Mm-hmm. And, when you sit on the outside, we all assume that, in organizations, unless you have Ari as an owner, and then it's exceptional. But I'm just curious, as a player, and you looked at these organizations, their businesses, what kind of variations? What did you notice from one franchise to another that struck you?
The treatment of people. Some organizations treat people like their numbers, or quite frankly, some organizations treat players like their cattle. But I've also played for organizations that do the exact opposite, that take care of their players in fantastic ways. I just threw a joke about the Diamondbacks. They're actually my favorite organization I ever got to play for. They were incredibly honest, really thorough when it came to the mental side of the game and taking care of people's mental health, which is something that has been heavily discarded throughout my entire career. It's only towards the last couple of years that it was really taken seriously. And the Diamondbacks very much at the forefront of that. Same with the Boston Red Sox. I feel like any organization that takes care of the player first and really takes care of them rather than, only taking care of their guys. You saw a lot of that with the Padres. There was very much, it was almost like a caste system. These guys get more consideration than these guys, but the Rockies, same problem, only exploded even worse. The Royals, similar, but they really tried to put everything together in a more cohesive thing. But you could see why the Red Sox are always the Red Sox. And the Diamondbacks have a lot of those Red Sox people that have joined them. And it's just, I really love how those two organizations handle really the mental aspect and the mental health aspects of the game. I really appreciate what those two organizations are bringing to baseball. The Dodgers, I'm told, I never played for them, but I hear they're very much at the forefront of it. The Giants as well, same with the Tampa Bay Rays. But of the organizations I played for, the Diamondbacks and the Red Sox were just as good as it gets when it comes to handling people and how their treatment of people.
That's great. Mark?
You know, you spent 6 years before you got the proverbial call up. But tell us where you were. What were your feelings? You know, who did you call first?
I remember when I got the call. Well, it's funny. I was playing in AAA here. I'm actually in El Paso, Texas right now. I run a baseball and softball nonprofit out of here. I played in El Paso for 2 years in AAA for the San Diego Padres, and I just fell in love with this city. It's just the best place in the world. The people, the food, just everything about this place is just amazing. And I remember we played in the playoffs. We got knocked out. I remember sitting around my phone and I didn't get the call up, and I was just like, I guess that's it. I'm done. And there was a lot of thoughts about, and it was very unfortunate. I'd been told every year that I was getting called up, and it just kept not happening. I remember AJ Hinch was our general manager, and he quit. And then the next day he called me saying that was my fault. My last thing I should have done was call you up. And I said, great, thanks. That doesn't help me at all today. You're great. You're great. But it was just one of those things where we finished the playoffs. I flew all the way home, and I was sitting there in my baggage claim. And I remember we had a new head of player development, young guy named Sam, and a really nice guy. And at the time, he was struggling in the position. I wouldn't say struggling, but he was just new to the position. He was my age. It's a very big job to be the head of player development for a major league organization. But I remember I sent him a text that night just saying, thank you so much for the year. I know you guys are going to be amazing going forward. I know you're going to crush this job. And just want to say thank you. And I remember I landed a baggage claim, and I was sitting there, and I had a very tearful night with my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, Jennifer. And we were talking about maybe baseball, maybe that's it. Maybe we shut it down. Maybe it's just time to find something new. There's nothing more I can do to get to the big leagues. And if they're not going to call me up after these years, what am I going to do? And I remember I got that phone call. It said Sam. I answered it, and I was like, "Hey, Sam, what's going on?" He started going. He's like, "I loved your text. Thank you so much. It was very nice of you to say that. I know how disappointed you are on how this organization's treated you over the years, and I just want you to know how much your work has been appreciated here." And I said, "Thanks, Sam. It means a lot to me." He's like, "Great. Well, you're not done yet, so we need you to grab your stuff, and the team's going to really need you in Phoenix in about 2 hours." And I just said,
Oh, wow.
"What was that?" I said,
Wow.
He's just like, "You're going to the big leagues." And I just immediately paused, and I just said, Sam, this is great. But I've done a lot of pranks, and I've really wronged a lot of people in this organization. And if this is a prank, I just want you to know it's hilarious. It's really good, really, really good. But if it is a prank, I do not think I can handle it in this current mental state I'm in. And he just started laughing. He just said, "No, dude, you're going to the big leagues. Congratulations. You've earned it 40 times over. I hope you get a shot up there." And unfortunately, I didn't get the shot, but I remember I got the thing, and then right away, I got a text message right when I got off the phone with Sam Gainey. Reggie Smith, my mentor growing up, I got a text from him saying, "Congratulations." And I just said, "Wait, what? How do you know? I just got off the phone, literally 10 seconds ago." And then he just sends me a winky face. And I'm like, okay. Then my girlfriend picked me up at the airport, now my wife, and she was there to grab me, and she was the first person I actually told. She just comes out, grabs my bag, and I just look at her. I'm like, "I'm going to the big leagues." And she just started crying, absolutely bawling. And we hugged. We got to go over to my parents' house and tell them, which was great. And I got on a flight and went to the big leagues in Arizona. Unfortunately, I didn't get I only got one start, but I did get that start at Dodger Stadium. And as a kid growing up in LA with the opportunity to watch Dodger games his whole life, grew up a diehard Dodger fan. Now I don't care. They can win or lose. I'm not going to lose sleep either way. But at the time, it was very special to have my one start to be at Dodger Stadium.
That's pretty cool. All right, so I got to ask you, since you said that, so tell us, number one, what position did you play? How many at-bats did you get? And who was the starting pitcher for the Dodgers?
The starting pitcher for the Dodgers was Travis Wood, which was not good for me at the time because I was really struggling off of lefties that year. And if you know Travis, he really he's got a really funky delivery. He really only tops out at 93, but the way he pauses mid stride, it kind of has the perception of closer to 96 to 98. It's not 96 to 98, but it seems like it. He's a very effective pitcher, very funky down here angle. And I didn't really get better at hitting lefties and really until 2016-17. And by that time I was a master against lefties. I really was sad because I really only pinch hit when I was in the big leagues, and I never pinch hit before. Pinch hitting is a very difficult skill to learn, and to be quote unquote pinch hitter at the big leagues, you need a lot of practice. And I didn't have the practice. I never did it. I thought I would just handle it like my normal at bats that I would start day to day. And it's just not the same beast. So I learned a lot from that experience, and I got incredible at pinch hitting. But quite frankly, it was almost like they called up the wrong version of me for the job they wanted me to do. But I also didn't know what the job they wanted me to do. It was kind of every day. Hey, Cody, when was the last time you had a bat? 2 weeks ago? Great. Madison Bumgarner's got a no-hitter in the 8th. Good luck. That did happen, by the way.
Really? Yeah, that's pretty tough. Donna?
Yeah. So I got to ask Joyce questions. First of all, first one's pretty basic. I'm not sure if you know. You should have a good idea on this one, Cody. What's the average salary for a professional baseball player in the major leagues?
It's extremely skewed because I've heard multiple different numbers, but the actual answer is about $500,000.
Seriously?
Yes.
The average?
Yes. The majority of Major League Baseball players are on their initial contract, so they don't hit arbitration until their 3rd year. So most of the players you see in Major League Baseball are making Major League minimum.
Really? That's interesting, because at the NBA, it's like $5 million.
Well, I mean, it's not like you can scoff at the salary, but really the guys that get called up, they're not there to play every day. They're there to have spot starts and go back down and back and forth. And that's kind of the song and dance they're going to be in for a couple of years. So Major League Baseball, it's all about cost cutting. In fact, average Major League salary is down about $2 million to where it was 10 years ago.
That is fascinating. Joy also would like to know, can you give a specific example of how baseball is more exciting on the field now?
The players, the athletes are simply at a level that they've never been before. It used to be there was a movie in about the early 2000s called The Rookie starring Dennis Quaid. It's a truly terrible movie. Don't even bother watching it. Disney, just nightmare of a film. But it was a true story, well, based on a true story, and that the pitcher that was signed after years of being retired was throwing 97 miles per hour. And I'll never forget, in that movie, there's a line in there where he says to his wife, he's like, "They had me clocked at 97, darling." And he said, "Is that good?" He's like, "You know how many players in the major leagues can throw 97? And she said, "How many?" He's like, "You can count them on one hand. You can count on one hand how many guys do not throw 97 now. There's not a single organization that doesn't have a guy that throws 95 plus in every single team. In fact, it's almost a barometer. You can't even get signed as a pitcher unless you throw 95 anymore. So that's where baseball is athletically. Pitchers right now are doing things to baseballs that have never been done before. Not to mention the athletes that are on the field. It used to be a foregone conclusion that these athletes would go on and play basketball and football because they're cheaper sports and it's very alluring to play basketball or football. But those players are now playing baseball. There is a different type of athlete right now in the major leagues than there's never been. You can say that to an old school guy and he'll absolutely lose his mind. But I'm sorry, the guys are stronger and faster now, and this is not in a steroid era.
So is there any then truth to, I think, an article I read the other day that said the game is now strikeouts or home runs and nothing in between because of that athleticism?
It's made a little bit too black and white with that statement. It's a little too general. There's about 1,000 different variables of why baseball is so high on power and so high on strikeouts. There's, the baseball's changing every single year is a big problem. They were very live 2 years ago. So Major League Baseball had the highest home run totals they've ever had. And now they de-juiced the baseballs, and now pitchers are throwing with raised seams. And not to mention, they are using a lot of foreign substances on baseball, but everyone's acting like that's a brand new thing. It's not. That's been happening for 100 years.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Hey, Arnie?
Yeah, I just want to stay on that track because I heard you say this, I think, at the beginning of the evening. I think for people that are following baseball, some mandates have come down in the last couple of days here about foreign substances cracking down. And, it's been interesting to watch the batting averages the last week because they've come down a little bit just in the last week. But you said something that you think that there's some intentionality to it because of the collective bargaining agreement for next year. Talk about that, because I've heard that. I heard that on TV today by somebody else. That's really interesting. Talk about that.
Listen, Major League Baseball is very, very guilty of creating their own controversies. This is something they just do endlessly. They turn blind eyes to certain things until it gets too out of control, or they flat out allow it to happen because it's what's best for business in that exact moment, even though they know full well it's going to cause a serious problem 10 years down the road. I mentioned that Major League Baseball salaries are down about almost $2 million to where they were 10 years ago. That's not by accident. Rule changes are never for what they say they are. If they say that there's a rule change for for the purpose of pace of play, it's not. Every rule change that comes into play is about one thing and one thing only, and that is money. Whatever can make more money to baseball. And the collective bargaining agreement, Major League Baseball is about to start adopting a lot of things, one of which that's been thrown around a lot is gambling. Gambling is going to become a major aspect of not only Major League Baseball, but all of professional sports. So there's a lot of money out on the table to be had for Major League Baseball. Just 2 years ago, they made $12.8 billion in revenue, which was the highest amount of money they've ever made. And it's just, now you're going to add the gambling aspect of it. I believe they worked out a partnership with MGM. It's going to be through the roof on the revenue that they're going to be making. And going into a new collective bargaining agreement is, in case you don't know this, the owners and the players simply do not get along. And there's about 100 years of a track record of why that is. A lot of shady business dealings from on the owner's side. And now the players are not afraid to play just as dirty as them. When these things start to happen, there's always a reason. They kind of started to do it last year and it backfired on the owners. You saw how the season kept getting postponed during the COVID thing. And the players finally had to put out statements. We want to play. This is not about money to us. They're just trying to get us to play for free. And we're not playing for free. All they wanted was their normal salaries at the prorated rate. That's it. And Major League Baseball tried very hard to make the players look like the bad guys. That's what they try to do every time that the collective bargaining agreement is getting close. How can we get fans to turn on these greedy ball players, even though the greedy ball players are only making a percentage of the money that, quite frankly, all the billionaires are absolutely pocketing?
Okay. Okay. It's interesting. I was both a professional athlete, Cody, and I was also a commissioner of a league.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to sit, have a perspective. And I know that Arnie also has had that vantage point when you see the business from both ends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's challenging, right? But you want to be referred to like you did to the Diamondbacks. You want to be leading an organization that treats people where people feel like they're being seen. And professional sports can be really, really challenging. Now, I wanted to say that we have this, I think I mentioned his name, Ruben Gassi. Have you ever met him? He is our number one fan of Israel baseball. And so
as he should be. Great choice.
He sent us many, many questions, and I want to make sure that he knows we see him and appreciate his participation. So let me give you this one. I think this is a good one. And then we can get into some of the anti-Semitic stuff that you have participated in race. He says, what are some of the difference between the 2017 World Baseball Classic team and the team that's going to the Olympics?
The players are different. That's really it. There's more Israeli-born players that are going to be there. I'm not on the team. Josh Zeid is, Blake Galen is, Ty Kelly is, Danny Valencia, and a few other really good ball players that also played with us in the previous tournaments. That's just it. Just a different personnel, different coaching staffs. I think they have just as good of a chance to win as anybody else. The Mexico team's going to be quite good. The U.S. team's going to be quite good. The Japanese team's going to be through the roof. So they have a very good chance of competing, and it's a very small sample size. So there is no reason they couldn't go on a very good short-term run and win it all. So the team is very talented. I got to play against them a couple of weeks ago. I brought a group of guys from El Paso to play against them in the Scottsdale facility in Arizona. Great guys. I'm really excited for them. And I got to tell you, they are really charged up for this. So that's really the only difference. Just the personnel is a little different.
But let me follow up with you because I assume, were there a lot of Jewish professional baseball players you played with? I mean, here you're on a team where everyone's Jewish. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes, everyone is Jewish.
Okay. How does that feel? I mean, can you feel it? Is it something it's tangible to you?
It's very odd because it's something we didn't think about. It wasn't really something that got brought up to us very much growing up or even playing in professional baseball. I didn't really play, I don't think, with any other Jewish players at a high level except for Nate Fryman. I remember me and Nate Fryman were together in AA San Antonio, and then we were together again in AA Portland for the Red Sox as well. And then we also played on WBC together. So I remember there was an article written about us when we were in the Texas League, said the greatest power hitting Jewish duo in the history of baseball is currently in San Antonio. And we laughed at that going like, yeah, but we're the only power hitting Jewish duo in the history of baseball. So that's really not a high bar to reach. But yeah, it was fun. It was exciting. When we got together as a group in 2013, then again in 17, that fact that we all were Jewish was not something we focused on. It was just something that was there. It was something that bonded us together in a very unique way that we didn't even speak about to each other. I think other people wanted us to talk about it more than we did. We kind of saw ourselves as a group of ball players that had been very much disrespected by the establishment, disrespected by the game. In fact, when we were in the WBC, I remember ESPN wrote an article saying odds were 200-1, and that we were filled with wannabes and has-beens. And then we went right in there and we beat the hell out of every single team, knowing full well that we were better than them. We were just a bunch of guys that never had an opportunity. Looked up and down that lineup. It was just guys that made it to the big leagues, but never got a chance to stay in the big leagues, like Ryan Lavarnway, me, Nate Fryman, Ty Kelly. Even Sam Fold had a very good career, but even he was coming back from an injury and not really getting the respect. He gets the respect he deserves now because he's the GM of the Phillies, and he's an unbelievable person on and off the field. But we just felt like we had a lot to prove. And the fact that we were Jewish was just something that was like ready-made. We were together, and look at, like, it's just, we're automatically family because we're going to take care of each other just because we are Jewish. And it was a really special experience to do that and do that with all those guys. And, you know, we were able to change the narrative, and it was just a special experience.
Cody, I don't know if you've been to Israel.
I have.
You have, okay.
Yes.
I mean, but you do realize what you did in 2017? Really, the world, the Jewish world and the non-Jewish world, were both watching with such incredible pride of that Israel team. And I think when we look back now 10, 20 years from now and see baseball flourishing even more in a country like Israel, it's gonna come back to what you did just a few years ago, and hopefully what happens in Tokyo in a few weeks. But have you given some thought to that legacy? Because I think that's pretty incredible.
Very much so. That's actually that whole developmental of, you know, the fact of the idea of, you know, building all these fields in Israel, which is wonderful. I got to be there at the Bet Shemesh when we were dedicating a ballpark, and I know they're finally getting to work on that ballpark now. And the other teams, and I get to see on social media guys over there working out and training. But, you know, developmental, the idea of being able to, you know, turn it into a factory and really making Israel itself a powerhouse for baseball, that's a long-term goal. You know, it's not, as much as we'd love it to be a short-term goal, that 2017 team is going to now spark this younger generation to go off. Well, those guys need to have the right people to train them and to have the right people to show them the right way. There's just not a whole lot of people over there in Israel to do so. You know, I'm trying to do something here in El Paso very similar. I'm trying to be focused on developmental and build this area. And I'm actually working with some people in Israel right now, trying to figure out a way to create a partnership with Israel, have their players come here and train with us in this big facility we're trying to build, and have our players go to Israel and learn more of a exchange program. So we're throwing around really big ideas. And I do think what it'll help is we're at the very much the forefront of baseball and developmental and on the metric side and the players side. So I want to be able to give that to Israel and vice versa. And I think it's just going to be good, not only for Israel and El Paso, but good for the game of baseball as a whole. The goal for baseball itself is to become a world sport, and it's on its way. It really is well on its way, but it's going to take a lot of collaboration and a lot of work together, and understanding that the way the game is learning new aspects of the game, the way people are trying to hack the game and learn how to, you know, get these guys to the point where they can throw 97 safely and be able to go back out there, to be able to hit 97 and go out there and play 162 games a year. You know, it's going to take a lot of collaboration and a lot of work together. And it's something I'm really, really excited about. Very excited about, in fact, not only here in El Paso, but in Israel as well.
Well, you should be very proud. I have to tell you that I saw it, you know, our organization, Maccabi USA, started baseball in the Pan American Games 22 years ago in 1999. And I was in Israel a decade later for the Maccabi. And I mean, if we had 40 people watching baseball, we were lucky for those games. Now the country is alive. I mean, it's excited. It's infatuated with the sport. And again, I think all of it's coming back to 2013 and then certainly 2017.
My big worry, though, with Israel and developing baseball in Israel, and this is my main worry, it has nothing to do with fields or interest because the interest is there. The kids are there. They want to play and they want to learn. It's just the information and being able to get them the information they need to get them to succeed at the next level. Because even in the United States, there are cities and states in the United States that are being left behind because they don't have access to where baseball is going. We've learned more in the last 5 years than we did in the previous 15. That's how quick it's going. So the last thing I want is that all this great momentum that Israel is getting to then fall behind because they don't have the knowledge that they need right in front of them. And there are a lot of people that are helping, and there are a lot of people that have their hands in it. But I really want to help Israel be at the forefront of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel strongly about Israel, and it's a time filled with questions and tension around a global response to Israel and anti-Semitism. And I think you've been quoted more than once, I would say, Cody, about your experiences in baseball and anti-Semitism and how you feel being a Jewish athlete. I mean, a true minority in a sport that perhaps let you know that you were a minority.
Well, if you been around the professional game, Arnie, I think I don't need to be speaking for you, but it's a very Christian game. On the whole, it doesn't mean that that's a negative or a positive on any end. It's just there's a lot of Christianity entrenched in Major League Baseball, so much so that chapel is provided every Sunday, and I would remember there was only a couple of times that I dealt with chaplains that got a little too exuberant with me, to say the least. Would you like to go to chapel, Cody? No, I'm Jewish, but I do appreciate the offer. And I remember one time, I don't remember where I was playing, but one chaplain just would not leave me alone. He was dead set, not of me going to chapel, but he was dead set on converting me. He went on a whole thing about how, Jews don't get into heaven, Cody. And I'm like, okay, you could leave now. Please leave my club. It got so bad that my manager had to intervene because my manager saw that I was about to lose it. It's little things. It's little comments here and there. The only time I really saw something really bad was I was playing in Frisco, Texas, in Double-A, and me and Nate Fryman, as I mentioned, both Jewish players, and I remember there was a group of frat boys who were saying just about any Jewish slur under the sun they could find. Game had to actually be stopped at one point. They had to be removed from the stadium. I got a very wonderful apology from the Frisco Rough Riders because it wasn't their fault. I mean, it was just they'd handled it as best they could. But yeah, I mean, it's just you're seeing it now. There's so much out there when it comes to hatred towards Jews and just fear of Jews, and it's something that when I played for the WBC the first time, we had a bus that we weren't allowed to take. It had to be sniffed out by bomb sniffing dogs. And this was in the United States. We were in Florida. We weren't in enemy territory. We were in a spot where we should have been more than safe, but we weren't allowed to take the bus, and they had to make sure it wasn't bombed every day. It's a harsh reality sometimes learning how you're viewed in other places that you're not used to. Spring training one time in Arizona, I remember I met up with a bunch of teammates and they were talking to a group of girls, and I went and sat at the table, and one guy, because we would always, we're friends, we're close. I don't mind if my teammates would make a Jewish joke towards my way. I'd usually laugh it off and laugh it with them and maybe double down and make a joke with them. But I remember they said that, and one of the girls was truly repulsed that I was Jewish, and the girls demanded I left the table because I was Jewish. And I had never experienced this in my life, and my teammates went crazy. They just yelled at them, told them to get the hell out of here. It's a very weird reality to live in sometimes because I never really did anything. I just was born. That's all. I was born born from a woman with the last name Cohen. And for some reason, that immediately puts a label on you that you're to be hated and feared the rest of your life.
Yeah, it is so. We had a talk earlier, Arnie. I think Don Kent's on the phone. Several of us, in terms of being really concerned these days, especially on behalf of our younger athletes. We're going to be taking a whole team to Israel in a year, as they read and see social media that's filled with vitriol based on what, having the ability to understand where a lot of these myths and misinformation stem from, to be forewarned and forearmed. You know what I mean? To be able to take it. It's tough. Right?
It is. And I remember a year ago when after COVID, the season started, and I remember the A's bench coach actually threw up a Nazi salute, but he did it as a joke. And he didn't understand why that's not funny. That's just not funny to us. You have to understand people, especially in during that time, and you're seeing more neo-Nazis in the United States than I've ever remembered seeing. It's honest to God scared me, and it scared me for a different reason. Not that I was furious with this guy, and because he truly, I've spoken to many people who've spoken to him about it. I've gotten apologies from members of the A's organization. He's like, listen, he's a very good guy. He was honestly trying to make a joke. I'm like, well, it wasn't a good joke, and here's why. We are currently living in a very scared time. And if you're out there making Nazi salutes mid-game, you're just normalizing it. They see that. They think that gives them the right to continue doing this. And that puts us in a very, very, very actionable position. And I don't want to be in an actionable position because you think you're making a joke.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. We have time probably for one or two more questions, Arn.
Well, I wanted to actually, I'm glad you mentioned that situation. I think the bench coach, it was Ryan Christensen, I think.
Yes, it was.
Have you spoken to him since? First of all, I commend you for taking the right stand and saying this is not only wrong, but there was no accident. This was something that was done, even in a joking manner, was done intentionally. Have you spoken with him, and what's been the reaction within the baseball world?
That's the thing. The reaction within the baseball world was that there was no reaction from the baseball world. The only reaction we got was from Jewish people in baseball, and there aren't a lot of us really on the players' side, especially, and not on the vocal side. I did speak to a player that did speak to him, a Jewish player that did speak to him, and that player really, really was adamant. He's incredibly ashamed and embarrassed. And I do believe that. I don't think he had any ill intent whatsoever. I truly, truly do believe that. But I do think there should have been some sort of punishment out of it. Not necessarily that he should have lost his job, but I think education is not out of the question. That's the one thing that I think we need to really focus in on, not punishing everybody for the mistakes they make, even if it's just a small mistake, even if it's a big mistake. I just think education and a conversation is really the direction to go to, rather than, well, fire that guy. Yeah, maybe if he truly does have that hatred in his heart, but I think if there's an opportunity to get us to all grow together a little bit in this game, I think that is the best possible outcome you can get. And that was my biggest problem. We didn't have that conversation. We didn't have that education. It literally came and went. And that's what bugged me. Stop letting these things come and go. If we don't learn from it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
Well said. Well, Donna, since we only got a little bit of time, we got to close it with Mensch on the bench. So you got to bring it back out. Got to bring it out again.
Oh, love it. Tell us about Mensch.
Okay, well, it's actually not a long story. It's a short story. I just watched them on Shark Tank. That was it. Saw it on Shark Tank. Thought it was the funniest, dumbest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Then I remember we were playing in the qualifier of the WBC in Brooklyn. And, we had a great turnout for that. A lot of Jewish fans came out and watched us win that tournament, which was great. But I remember the night before game one. If you've seen the movie Major League, you know that there's a Cuban player named Pedro Serrano. He deals in voodoo, and he always has his one idol in his locker that is known as somebody help me. Why am I not thinking of the name? Jobu. So he had Jobu that he would always offer rum to, and he would light a cigar for him before games to help him hit curveballs. Not exactly how baseball works, but we've done crazier and stupider things. Trust me. I've done the dumbest things ever just to get a hit. But I will say that I remember going into our game, and I just looked at our club, and I'm like, we don't have enough. He's like, what are you talking about? We're the best team in this tournament. I'm like, we're missing something. We need a Jobu. We need a Jewish Jobu. He's like, what's that? I'm like, are you aware of the Mensch on a bench? He's like, what is that? Have you heard of the elf on a shelf? He said, yes, that, but this one's a Mensch on a bench. He's like, well, where am I supposed to find that? I said, I don't know. We're in New York. Figure it out. We need it by game time tomorrow. I got a phone call at 3 a.m. from my club. He said, I've been all over the city, and look what I found. And it was a Mensch on the bench, just a small one. And I'm like, perfect. Bring that tomorrow. We got it its own locker, got it its own talus, and we started making offerings to it. Then I'm just like, well, this is obviously going in the dugout. This is not going to sit in the clubhouse. Everyone needs to know about the bench. So we put it out there. We started decorating it. And we win game 1, bring it back out. Then all of a sudden there's more things with the bench. Go to game 2, and I'm doing all these post-game interviews, and I would bring it back with me. And I kind of treated it like my Andy Kaufman gag. Every time they try to ask me a question about it, I just wouldn't acknowledge it. I'm like, what are you talking about? What bench? And I remember one time Jerry Weinstein was my manager. He was sitting two chair spots away from me. He's like, Cody, could you tell me about that bench on your right? That's Jerry Weinstein, my manager. And he just looked at me. He's like, oh, this. And so I just kept doing that. I remember we got to the tournament, and the bench on the bench people reached out to me and said, hey, our sales just went up huge because of what you did in the thing. I'm like, great. Are you going to give me money? He said, no, but I'll give you a life-size bench on the bench. I'm like, oh, that's just the same thing. So he sent me, I have so much bench on the bench memorabilia I don't know what to do with. I don't care. I have a whole room in my house just dedicated to the bench on the bench. My wife loves it. But he sent me the life-size bench on the bench. I took it with me over to Tokyo and Korea, and it took on a life of its own. People were it was getting 5-to-1 more interview requests than any player on the team. And we just kept doing it. I just kept taking it around. I mean, since I retired, I had this in Santa Monica, my parents' house. I would hide it in places I know where they were going. When they would leave town, I would hide it in their bed for when they would come home. I was just really, really enjoying myself scaring people with it. I would hide it in my wife's car whenever she was going into her car. It's been a gift that keeps on giving.
It sounds like a fun. And note to us, Arnie, and I know Don's on, we should definitely figure out a mascot. Every team should have a mascot. I bet you it will be the most sought after thing in, the international exchange. We got to figure it out. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, I got to say, Mensch on the Bench is a pretty good mascot, and they're very easy to work with.
I think you might be right. I think you might be right. Cody, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to spend with us. Your effervescence, your energy, your experience is a joy to learn about. So thank you so much to spend it with the Maccabi family.
I appreciate it. And if I can say, I mentioned the things I'm doing here in El Paso, large Jewish community here in El Paso. I run a baseball and softball nonprofit. It's a 501c3. It's all dedicated to getting kids into college through baseball and softball. It's education through athletics, and that is the goal of the organization. So when I say that I want people to go to college for baseball and softball rather than going pro right out of high school, that's not just something I think. That's something I desperately believe in, and I really want other people to believe in it as well. Our whole goal is to get baseball and high-end baseball as affordable as possible, and I'm really proud of the work we're doing here. Also, you guys can check me out. I check out the website, borderyouth.org. It's borderyouth.org. Please check out everything we have going on. Really excited about it.
Borderyouth.org, everyone.
Borderyouth.org. And of course, check me out. I'll be on tomorrow morning on 670 The Score in Chicago. You can check it out on the Odyssey app. I'll be on Bernstein Rahimi. We have a very large announcement about a show that's about to pop up somewhere. I'm not allowed to say things. I think, maybe, who knows? Listen tomorrow and find out. And other things as well. So check out everything. You can check me out on my social media at Decker6, and you'll find out everything that's going on.
That's awesome. Really, it's a joy. And we will. You're part of the family now. We're not going to let you go, okay?
Oh, no, I'm not going anywhere. We're all family, man. We're all part of a very, very, very special club, and I like being a part of this club.
Yeah. Okay, Ruben, in terms of asking Cody more questions, yes, send them to Shane. And I'm sure if Shane sends them to Cody, he'll answer them for you. Yeah.
I probably will.
All righty. All right, everybody. Arnie, as usual.
Just close it, Cody.
Actually, Arnie, you are the Mensch on the bench. We don't need to say a stuff thing. We have Arnie Fielko, the real life Mensch on the bench. Thanks, Arnie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cody. And thank you, Pearl, for bringing us, Cody. We'll see you in 2 weeks with a guest to be announced soon.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night. And remember, Stiesel on Netflix.